Everyone. Today we're going to talk about midpoints and segment bisectors. So the definition of a midpoint is a point on a segment which divides a segment into two congruent segments. So a reminder, the word congruent means it is the same size and the same shape. So basically they're equal. That's just a fancy word in geometry we use to say the two shapes are equal. The marks we use to show congruence are these little dash marks. So if M is the midpoint of that line, then those two pieces are congruent. So this piece and this piece are congruent. So that's what those symbols mean. And the way we write this as a statement is we would say segment AM is congruent to segment BM. And again, that little symbol in the middle means congruent. So it's like an equal sign with a squiggly mark on the top. Then a segment bisector is a segment, line, ray, or plane that intersects a segment, so like it crosses it, through its midpoint. So in this picture, line L, is the segment bisector. So that's cutting the segment in half. So this piece is congruent to this piece. So that statement again would be segment A, not AB, AM is congruent to segment MB. So if we want to decide for these next pictures if it's a midpoint, looking at the first picture, it doesn't look like that dot is in the middle, and there are no congruent segments. So this one would be no, because you're missing the congruent marks. So you need those little dashes on it to decide that it's congruent. So I'm missing congruent marks. On number 2, it has the congruent marks. So because it says that this and this are congruent, that means that this point is the midpoint. So this one is a yes. Ooh, the last one, it's got the congruent marks, but it's not a straight line. So this one would be a no because it's not a straight line. So putting this into action, this one says find D, DE, and EF. So they told us the whole length is 18. So if it's being split into two congruent segments, it's being split in half. So if I wanted to divide a number in half, I would do 18 divided by 2, and that would split into two equal parts. So I would know this piece and this piece both equal 9. So DE and DF both equal, or EF both equal 9. So I'm just going to say DE equals EF, which equals 9. On the next picture, again, they give us the congruent marks. So I know this piece is 11. So the whole thing would be 11 plus 11, or double 11, so 22. So NP equals 11, and MP equals 22. The next one says identify the midpoint segment bisector and then find the indicated length. So midpoint, right here in the center, it's being separated into two congruent segments. So the midpoint is point F. The segment bisector is going to be that line cutting it in half. So that's the segment CB or BC. FQ, it's got the congruent marks, so we know it's got to be the same. So it's also 6.2. And PQ, you would add those two pieces together. So 6.2 plus 6.2 would give you 12.4. All right, the next one, you can see that M is in the middle. So M is our midpoint. And the bisector, ooh, this time they just gave us a little letter. So the way we name that is we say line L. And then AM, well, they told us that these are congruent. So AM has to also be 35. And AB would be 35 plus 35, which is 70. Ooh, coming back to X. So they did ask us for X. So we know that 5X and 35 are both here. So if we do 5X equals 35, because we know those are equal, then we can solve for X. So if I divide by 5, I know X equals 7. All right, just two more. So here we have a line M bisects JH. So I know it's cutting into two congruent pieces. Find the value of X and the length of the segments. All right, so we know those are equal. So we can set 5X equal to 3X plus 10 because they're congruent. And then solve for X. So move the x's by adding or subtracting. So 2x equals 10. We divide by 2, x equals 5. So if we know x equals 5 for JW, we would be doing 5 times 5 because we plug it in. So we know that's 25. So JW equals 25, which means WH would also equal 25. And the whole JH would be the whole segment, so you would add those together to get 50. Finally, we have find the value of x and then the length of QR. So they told us again these are congruent, so we can set them equal to each other. So I would add 10. So 4x equals 88. Then divide by 4. So x equals 88 divided by 4, 22. So to find QR, really we didn't even need that to find QR, because if I know this is 78, then this is also 78. So to find the whole length of QR, we can just do 78 plus 78, which gives us 156. So sometimes it'll ask for x, but it's not always what we need to find the total answer. So sometimes if you can't figure out what x is, you can still find the final answer without it. All right, hopefully this is helpful, and good luck with your midpoints and segment bisectors.